You never expect your own child to become the one who makes you feel like you don't belong. But here I was, 71 years old, sitting on the edge of a twin bed in my grandson's old room, now cleared out to fit a second-hand recliner, a small dresser, and a folded-up card table where I kept my tea and crossword puzzles. The walls still had cartoon decals of dinosaurs. I never took them down. They reminded me of when my grandson used to knock on my bedroom door and ask for an extra bedtime story. Back when I was still grandma and not the burden. It all started about 10 months ago, shortly after my husband Richard passed. He and I were married for 48 years. He was quiet, dependable, kept a little notepad in his shirt pocket to track gas mileage and grocery prices. He died sitting up in his recliner, holding a glass of sweet tea. Peaceful, they said. After the funeral, I tried to stay in our home. Lord knows I wanted to, but it was too much, financially, emotionally, even physically. Every time I opened the closet and saw his coats lined up neatly, it crushed me. So when my son Nathan offered, "Why don't you just move in with us for a while, Mom?" I said yes. He said, "A while." I didn't realize that meant until you become inconvenient. At first, things were fine. His wife Dana was polite. Not warm, but polite. She cleared a space in the hall closet for my sweaters and even bought me a lavender-scented hand soap for the downstairs bathroom, my designated one. But after about 4 months, things changed. I started hearing things like, "Mom, can you maybe not use the stove during Dana's meetings? It makes too much background noise. Mom, I know you like Jeopardy, but we need the living room for movie night with the kids." Bit by bit, my world shrank. First, it was just the guest room. Then it was only the guest room. Then even that came with conditions. The moment everything shifted, the moment I knew something inside me had to change, came on a rainy Wednesday. I'd made stew, beef, carrots, potatoes. Dana said they'd be home by 6. I served it up hot. Table set, napkins folded, the good bowls. They came in at 6:45. No apology, just laughter and the smell of takeout. Nathan popped his head into my corner of the house, chopsticks in hand. "Oh, Mom, we stopped at that new Korean place. Dana was craving it. You can put the stew in the fridge. I'll eat it tomorrow." He walked off before I said a word. I stood there holding a ladle, hearing the stew bubble behind me, hearing the wrappers rustle as they opened cartons of someone else's dinner in the kitchen I used to run. The next morning, I was pouring cereal in the same quiet corner when I overheard it, clear as day. Dana said, "She doesn't help. I mean, she just takes up space, like she's always here." And Nathan, my son, my baby who I nursed with cracked nipples and stayed up with through asthma attacks, he replied, "You're lucky we even let you stay here, Mom. We didn't have to. You could have gone to a senior facility like everyone else." And he said it like he was doing me a favor, like I was some straggler they pulled off the sidewalk. I didn't cry. Not then. But I went back into my little room, sat down on that twin bed covered with dinosaur sheets, and stared at the wall for a long, long time. That night, I dug through the lockbox I'd kept in the bottom of my suitcase, the one nobody ever asked about. Inside it was the last check Richard ever wrote, still sealed in an envelope with my name on it. I had forgotten about it in the fog of grief. He'd handled the estate planning quietly, but I remembered him saying once years ago while cleaning out the garage, "Just in case anything ever happens, you'll be okay, Maggie." The check was made out to me. 6 figures. Enough to buy a small house outright if I was smart. And I've always been smart, even if no one bothers to notice anymore. And right then, I made a quiet decision. I was going to let them think I was helpless. Let them roll their eyes. Let them whisper behind doors. But I had a plan, and it was going to be right next door. I didn't cash the check right away. No, that would have been too loud. And if there's one thing I've learned in this life, it's that the quiet moves last longer than the loud ones. Instead, I folded Richard's envelope back up, placed it in the inside pocket of my purse, zipped it closed, and went about my days just as I had before, playing the role they expected, the polite old lady who stays out of the way. But inside I had fire in my gut and a mission stitched into every breath I took. I started house hunting in secret. Every Thursday, Dana had her yoga and lunch club, and Nathan usually worked late at the office. That was my window. I told them I was taking long walks or going to the library. which wasn't untrue. I did stop by the library now and then. But most of my afternoons were spent scrolling listings on a tablet at the public computer station or slipping into quiet open houses in nearby neighborhoods. I was looking for one thing: proximity. Proximity. Close enough to show I wasn't running. Close enough that they'd see me every morning watering my flowers. Close enough that my absence in their house would feel like a presence they couldn't ignore. And one morning, there it was. A tidy little 2-bedroom, just 2 doors down. Gray brick, white shutters, a wraparound porch, and a flower box already mounted under the front window. The real estate sign out front said, "Estate sale, must go quickly." I called the number and set up a private tour with the agent. Her name was Lisa, mid-40s, businesslike but kind, wore practical heels and had a binder so thick it looked like it had its own zip code. She opened the door, smiled warmly, and said, "You're Margaret, right?" I nodded, and then she froze. "Margaret? Walker?" she asked. "Yes," I said, a little puzzled. She laughed. "It's me, Lisa Redmond, from church choir. We sang soprano together when I was like 12. I blinked, and then I saw it. Those blue eyes, that shy smile. She used to twirl her hair during long sermons. "Lisa, my word, look at you. Last time I saw you, your braces were still on." She grinned. "Yeah, and you used to bring banana bread for the youth choir. You were always the nice mom." We ended up sitting on the back porch of the house for nearly an hour, catching up. She asked about Richard. I told her he was gone now. I asked about her parents. She said her mom had passed, and this was her mother's house, the very one I was sitting in. She always said she wanted a quiet, friendly neighbor who didn't throw loud parties or let their dog dig up her roses, Lisa said. You'd be her dream buyer. That night, I wrote her a check, not for the asking price, for full price, in cash. And just like that, the house was mine. Now, don't get ahead of me. I didn't move in the next day. No, I had one more thing to do first. I needed to make sure I left their house the same way I entered it, with dignity, grace, and no clue what was coming next. So I continued to make their tea. I folded their towels when the dryer beeped. I even complimented Dana's meatloaf the night it came out undercooked and gummy, just smiled and said, "The time was a nice touch." Meanwhile, I scheduled a contractor to repaint the guest bedroom in my new house. Pale blue, with soft curtains, a good chair for reading. A room that would be mine, not borrowed, not tolerated. One afternoon, while Nathan was in the garage tinkering with his old motorcycle, I wandered over and stood beside him. Casual. "You ever wonder who's moving in next door?" I asked. He shrugged. "Hope it's someone quiet. That house has been empty forever. Probably some retiree." I smiled. Probably. And in my pocket was the key. The hardest part wasn't packing. It wasn't sneaking bags out bit by bit, hiding them in the trunk during Dana's Pilates class, or folding my life into boxes labeled linens and books while pretending I was just reorganizing. The hardest part was knowing they wouldn't ask why. 2 weeks passed after I closed on the house. The papers were signed, the utilities scheduled, the paint drying on what would soon be my own guest room, should anyone ever want to visit me, not just tolerate me. I had nearly everything in place. Lisa, the realtor-turned-friend, even helped me find a local moving crew that came at sunrise and entered through the back alley, quiet as field mice. And still, neither Nathan nor Dana asked where I'd been disappearing to. Not when I started skipping breakfast to run errands. Not when I took fewer steps in their kitchen and more in the backyard, glancing over the fence at my soon-to-be front porch. Not even when I stopped folding their towels. Not a word. That Thursday, I woke up early. Made a full pot of coffee even though I knew Dana hated the smell of it lingering when she got up. Cooked one last breakfast. Eggs, grits, toast. Real food. My kind of food. I left it all on the table with a note. "Thank you for the space. I'll be just next door. Mom." That was it. No speech. No drama. Just a quiet bow. I walked out the back door, closed it behind me, and exhaled. Really exhaled for the first time in nearly a year. My new house smelled like lemon oil and hope. The movers had already placed everything where I wanted. The card table I once used as a makeshift desk was now in a sunny nook by a window. The twin bed was gone, replaced by a proper queen-size bed with floral sheets, the kind Richard always said reminded him of the countryside. I stood in the middle of my new kitchen, ran my hand across the counter, and whispered, "You did it, Maggie." Then I made a pot of coffee. The strong kind! And I poured myself a cup without worrying if it would offend anyone's scented candles. The reveal came later that evening. I was on the porch, watering the petunias I'd just planted in the window box, when Nathan pulled into the driveway next door. He stepped out of the car, glanced over as he always did, but this time, he paused. I gave him a little wave. He squinted, did a double take, then walked to the edge of the lawn, blinking. "Mom?" I smiled. "Hi, sweetheart." He looked at the house behind me. The for sale sign was gone, replaced by a new one. "Welcome home." Lisa had left it as a gift. "Wait, you bought this?" I nodded. 2 weeks ago. "But how? I mean, where did you—" I took a sip of my coffee. "Your father left me a little something, said I'd know when to use it." His mouth opened slightly, closed again. Dana came out then, holding her phone. When she saw me standing next door, on my own porch, wearing my Sunday cardigan and watering my own flowers, she froze like she'd seen a ghost. Nathan stepped forward, slowly. "You moved out?" "I did," I said. "Didn't want to be a burden, remember?" He winced. "I didn't mean it like that," he muttered. "You said it like that." Silence. Then he nodded. I didn't realize you were unhappy." I gave a soft laugh. "That's the thing, Nathan. You never asked." He looked at me for a long moment. Then quietly he said, I'll help you move anything else you need." I shook my head. "I'm all set, but thank you." Behind him, Dana was still standing there, arms crossed, expression unreadable. I didn't wave. I just turned, walked into my house, and shut the door with the kind of peace that only comes when you've finally stopped waiting for someone else to see your worth. You'd be amazed how short the distance between two houses can feel, and how long it takes for someone to cross it. I'd been in my new home for about a week when I realized something strange. Every day, Nathan and Dana walked past my house, sometimes twice, sometimes 3 times, but neither one knocked. Not once. They'd glance over, sure. Nathan even waved once, awkwardly, like he wasn't sure if he should, but they didn't come inside, and I didn't invite them, because I wasn't going to chase anyone anymore, not even my son. That first week, I did all the things I hadn't been able to do in nearly a year. I listened to jazz as loud as I wanted. Real jazz. Coltrane, Davis, Ella Fitzgerald, the music Richard and I danced to in the kitchen when no one was looking. I cooked with garlic and onions and didn't care if it lingered. I painted the back guest room peach, just because I liked it. Dana would have said it was dated, but it made me feel like summer in a room, and I planted tomatoes out back. Not because I needed them, but because I could. The funny thing is, the neighborhood started noticing me before my own family did. Mrs. Thomas, the widow 3 doors down, dropped off a plate of chocolate chip cookies and said, "It's so good to see someone back in this house. It sat empty too long." One afternoon, her granddaughter brought her over in a folding chair, and we sat on my porch, sipping iced tea and watching squirrels tear up someone's flower bed like it was a reality show. The mailman even said, "Welcome back," though I'd never met him before. I just smiled and said, "Feels good to have a key that fits." Then, about 10 days after I moved in, I got a knock on the door. It wasn't Nathan. It was Ellie, my 11-year-old granddaughter. She was holding a coloring book in one hand and a bag of gummy worms in the other. "Grandma?" She whispered like she was sneaking into a top-secret mission. "Can I stay here for a while? They're fighting again." My heart sank a little, but I smiled. "Of course, baby. I've got juice boxes and a clean couch." She came in, kicked her shoes off like she'd always lived there, and curled up with her book. I sat next to her, brushing her hair back, not asking questions. Sometimes kids don't need explanations, just peace. When Nathan finally did come over 2 days later, it wasn't with anger. It was with shame. He stood on my porch, one hand in his pocket, the other holding Ellie's backpack. "She didn't even tell us she'd left," he said. "Dana found out from a neighbor." I just raised an eyebrow. "She's always welcome here." Nathan sighed. "I know." There was a pause. Then he added, "We're not doing great. Me and Dana." I didn't say anything, because that wasn't my job anymore to fix, to smooth over, to absorb everyone's mess. He looked at me like he was seeing something new in my face. "You've changed," he said. "No," I replied gently. "I've returned." You just didn't recognize me for a while. He looked down at his shoes, embarrassed. I didn't mean to make you feel like a burden, Mom. I nodded, but you did, and I let that truth sit in the space between us. Then I stepped aside. Come in. Coffee's hot. As he sat at my kitchen table, looking at the flower box through my window, I could see him processing it all. This wasn't a rental. This wasn't some senior apartment or a guest room or a charity project. This was my home. He sipped the coffee. This tastes better than I remember. Freedom has a flavor, I said. He laughed. Kind of. It caught in his throat. That night, after he left with Ellie, I sat out on the porch again. Same chair, same breeze. But something had shifted. The distance between our houses hadn't changed, but something in him had taken a small step, and I didn't have to move an inch. I knew it was coming. I didn't know when, and I didn't know how she'd show up, but I knew Dana wasn't going to let my quiet escape sit peacefully forever. It happened on a Sunday. I was trimming my tomato plants in the backyard, wearing Richard's old sun hat, the one that still smelled faintly of aftershave and sawdust, when I heard the gate open without a knock. Dana stood there, arms folded across her lemon-colored blouse, lips pressed so tight they practically disappeared. No small talk. No fake smiles this time. Just this. Why didn't you say anything before you left? I stood up slowly and took off my gloves, thicker, letting the dirt fall from my fingertips like punctuation. I did, I said. I left a note. You left a thank you note, Margaret. That's not a conversation. I tilted my head. We stopped having those a long time ago, Dana. I figured it was polite to leave things the way they'd been. That hit her. I saw it land right in the spot people try to shield with defensiveness. But then she deflected as always. You blindsided Nathan. He's been off ever since you left. You could have... What? I cut in calmly. Warned you that I wasn't going to stay invisible forever? That shut her up for a second. Dana had always been sharp, organized, and outwardly respectful. But respect and kindness aren't the same thing. She did a good job looking like a good person. She ran her home like a business, and for a year, I was her unpaid intern. So no, I didn't feel bad for not requesting a formal transfer of my presence. Then, something surprising happened. Dana's face softened. Just a flicker, but real. She stepped a little closer and said, I didn't realize it got that bad. I just figured you were comfortable with how things were. I gave a light shrug. I used to convince myself of that too. She looked around my yard. My hydrangeas were blooming. The patio was swept clean. Wind chimes tinkled gently above us. I didn't expect you to land on your feet, she admitted. I laughed at that one. Not bitter. Just plain honest. That's because you forgot who raised the man you married. We stood in silence for a moment. Then she asked, Do you hate me? That question caught me off guard. I don't, I said. But I resented you for a long time, for treating me like a background character in my own son's life, and for making me feel like I needed to shrink to be welcome. Dana looked down. Maybe for the first time, she realized I wasn't just Nathan's mom or the grandma who knew how to fold fitted sheets better than she did. I was a woman, a widow, a full human being, and I had options. I want to do better, she said after a long pause. With you, with Ellie, even with Nathan. I didn't rush to comfort her. I'd learned not to smooth over grown adults just because they finally got a little uncomfortable. Instead, I offered her something harder and truer. Well, I said, if you want a relationship with me, Dana, it'll be one between equals, not service providers. She nodded. Fair enough. Then she looked at the tomato plant I'd been trimming and said, Your garden's nice. Thanks, I said, clipping one last stem. It grew better when I stopped asking permission to plant it. She left without asking to come inside, and I didn't invite her. But it felt like something had shifted. Not a fix, not a full apology, but a start. Later that evening, Nathan texted me. Dana said she talked to you. Said you were fair. Thank you. I looked at the message for a moment, then replied, Tell her I still like my coffee strong and my eggs runny. If she ever wants to invite me over like a guest, I'd consider it. There's something strange about standing in the exact same place where people once dismissed you and watching them tiptoe to earn your presence again. Not that I was holding it over their heads. No, I wasn't interested in revenge. I wasn't looking for apologies written in tears or some grand family reckoning. I just wanted respect. The kind you give someone before they're gone. It had been about 3 weeks since Dana came to my yard, soft-spoken and humbled. Since then, small things had started to shift. Ellie came by more often, not just when things got loud in her house, but to be with me. We baked, painted our toenails on the porch, and made a habit of doing the Monday crossword together, even though she mostly just filled in the dog-themed clues. Nathan came over once with a box of garden tools and offered to edge my lawn. I let him, but not because I needed help. I let him because he needed to do something. Sometimes people want to earn their way back, not through words, but through work. Then, one Friday afternoon, something happened I hadn't expected. The mailman, a new one, handed me a thick yellow envelope, no return address, handwritten. Inside was a letter, not from Nathan, not from Dana, but from Richard. I stood in my kitchen, holding the pages like they were made of stained glass. It was dated the year before he passed, the handwriting unmistakable. He had written me a letter meant to be delivered by his lawyer, should anything ever happen to him. But it must have gotten lost in the shuffle when his estate passed through probate. It had finally caught up to me. I sat down in my peach guest room and read, "Maggie, if you're reading this, I'm gone. I'm sorry. I wanted to be there longer, but life doesn't always follow the calendar we keep. You always worried you'd be a burden to someone, that if something happened to me, you'd end up in someone's way. So let me say this clearly, while I still have the breath. You are not a burden. You never were. You've carried this family, Maggie, quietly, without a ledger. You are the reason our son had clean clothes and confidence, the reason I could build my business knowing my home was solid. If you ever doubt that, remember this. I left you enough to live freely, not just survive, because you earned that, Maggie. In every casserole, in every night you stayed up with a sick kid, in every moment you were never thanked. Go live how you want to live. You don't need anyone's permission. Love always, Richard. I cried. Not because I was sad, but because it was like he'd seen the exact road I'd ended up walking and had already left lanterns for me along the way. He always knew. That night, I framed the letter, hung it near the front door. Not where everyone could see it, but where I would. Every time I left, every time I came home, a quiet reminder that I wasn't invisible, that I never was. Weeks passed, then a month. Dana invited me over for dinner one Sunday. She didn't make a show of it, just a simple invite, no expectations. I accepted. The food was good, the mood was better. Ellie showed me her school project. Nathan even thanked me for coming, for the recipe I'd given Dana, for just being patient with all of us. I didn't say much. I didn't need to. My presence said enough. And you know what the best part is? I didn't need to move away to find peace. I just needed to move into myself.